Of traditional, classic, country, contemporary, and Caribbean gospel in New Providence, Bahamas.
The thoughts, views, and comments expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production of Glory 93.9 FM.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Ladera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women. Wardrobe provided by Bahari Bahamas. Visit shopbahari.com. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and as always, it's a pleasure to be in your company today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And so on this beautiful Thursday, we are going to be looking at democracy in the Bahamas. Democracy under threat is what I'm calling the show today. And I am honored to reveal that my guest today is Loretta Butler Turner. And you know, Loretta Butler Turner, this is a woman who needs very little introduction, to tell you the truth, because everybody knows of her pedigree. Everybody knows of her contribution to politics in the Bahamas. I will tell you, though, officially, Loretta Butler Turner, let me just read the information that has been provided to me. She's a former parliamentarian and cabinet minister. And she makes it very clear that she's retired from politics. Her current focus is on family advisor and a consultant, board member, director, creating and developing entrepreneurship, and a special interests include gender equality, civil rights, preservation of democratic governance, retention of our Bahamian human and intellectual resources, and constitutional reform. And she's made it very clear that she's not here to talk about politics today. We are going to be talking about democracy. Is our democracy under threat? Now, Loretta has been keeping a very low profile. And then something happened that pulled her out. And that is when Arinthia Kamalafi and the leadership of the DNA were arrested for allegedly an event, the police say an event that took place 3 weeks before that warranted their arrest. And many people came out in support of Kamalafi, including Loretta Butler Turner. Here is a report that aired on Eyewitness News on the day of that arrest.
It is an attack on parties such as the DNA that is pushing a message of change outside of the status quo.
That was Kumalafi's reasoning as to why she was arrested today. But Police Commissioner Paul Roll says DNA members were arrested on 2 offenses stemming from their protest.
They did not have any permission again to demonstrate, and his persons attempted to forcefully gain their way into the Parliament.
But Kumalafe says if there was a breach, why weren't they arrested then? Well, here's the commissioner's response.
I instructed the officers at the time not to arrest anybody, but that we would deal with it later by way of summons.
Kumalafe's husband, Emmanuel Kumalafe, says officers summoned his wife Friday to appear at the police station 9 a.m. Monday for routine questioning.
Imagine my shock when she comes out a couple of minutes later and the officer says she has been arrested.
Adding to that shock, police asserted that the group of 11 could be held for quite some time.
The law provides that we can hold someone in custody for 48 hours.
48 hours? And I heard them tell the media that you don't need to wait. That means they intend to keep them that long?
At this point, the crowd began to swell. It wasn't long before outspoken activist Maria Daxon arrived.
You have a freedom of assembly in this country. As long as you are not causing no disturbance in this country, according to our Constitution, it is here.
Who was in fair 3 weeks ago when you were out there?
Nobody.
Who in the neighborhood made a complaint to the police?
Nobody.
At this point, Daxon made this clarion call.
I call it all parties to come out here, and we're going to protest all day to get Kumalafe and our crew out of Central.
And they came. The opposition Progressive Liberal Party, former Free National Movement leader, and independents in the Bahamian evolution sounded off.
This is not for me a political issue. This is an issue about civil rights, the right to protest, the right to have a voice. We are not sheep in this country. And I believe every Bahamian should watch this now and be concerned about the trend that is happening.
When we are having our freedoms oppressed and suppressed in this manner, we have got to ask the question, today for them, tomorrow for us.
Tell me what kind of people who's going to stand up and say what you're doing is wrong.
Today, Kumalafe asserted that the police force is serving as a puppet to the nation's leader.
Dr. Minnis himself was a part of a protest in 2016. He was also a part of the protest on Paradise Island where there was actually destruction to property. And to our recollection, Dr. Minnis was not brought in for questioning. There has to be some level of gender bias in this entire situation.
The police commissioner says once investigations are complete, he will decide whether the group will be fined, jailed, or acquitted. The DNA and its legal team says they are amped and ready.
All right, so let's bring in our guest into the picture. Loretta Butler Turner is our guest on GPS today. Such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you very much for the introduction.
You're looking lovely, as always.
Thank you, ma'am.
So many people looked at that news report and thought, oh, wow, this is huge because Loretta Butler Turner has come out to lend her voice to this. What prompted you to say, okay, enough is enough. I have to step forward and say something here. What were you most concerned about when you saw what was happening?
Well, first of all, I don't think it was huge simply because we came out. I think really when we look at what is happening in our country today, it was most important. I think we're having an echo in our broadcast.
On my end, it sounds fine.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're good from my end.
Okay. All right. So I think the important thing is that when we look at the democratic and civil rights of our Bahamians, we have got to ensure that there is a retention of those democratic policies. And when you see the abuse that we saw in the case of Kumalafe, I thought it was important for every right-thinking Bahamian and those who may have some influence to go and lend their voice to this cause.
Okay, so in a general sense, we have been watching some very strange things happen here in the Bahamas under the name of COVID-19 restrictions. And quite frankly, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but many Bahamians are questioning how far are we going to allow the erosion of our rights to go? As someone who has played a very, very pivotal role in the politics of the Bahamas, even though you've moved away from politics, what are you truly concerned about as it relates to the future of our democracy in this country and the road that we seem to be heading down?
Well, let me say, first of all, as far as the emergency orders are in the Bahamas and how they've been utilized, I think in the first instance it was very important so that we could understand the importance of what the pandemic was going or had the possibility of doing to our people.
Mhm.
It has been over a year now, and we're still seeing the very heavy-handed use of the emergency orders. And when we talk about democracy, I believe that it is important for us to know that democracy is equality of all citizens. And we have seen with the use of the emergency orders quite a bit of inequality where certain classes of individuals have been able to do and perform certain political activities, certain social activities, and there has been no recourse for them outside of the orders as the general public understands it. And therein lies the problem because the law is for all of us. I don't care whether it is the competent authority or whether it is the man or woman on the street. We must all be seen to be on the same level when it comes to our democratic rights. And that is where the infringement of our democratic practices and policies, I think, are beginning to be eroded.
Okay. Producer, I am getting a note from someone on Facebook saying that they're hearing echo as well. So I'm not sure why that is happening. I need you guys to look into that as soon as you can, and let me know when it's all sorted. And then somebody else is sending a message saying that they can't hear, but that they're the only person that is giving me that message. All right. Again, I know we're not talking specifically politics today. But you have to wonder whether or not, when we look at what is happening in our country today, are we moving, or I'm seeing what is increasingly looking like dictatorship. And when we think about all of the what's the word I'm looking for? The energy, the blood, the sweat, the tears that many of our predecessors put in to guarantee us the freedoms that we're supposed to be enjoying today. What has happened to our country to the point where we're standing by and we're seeing these freedoms eroded, and it's like you have a problem when you decide to speak out about it? What do you think is happening in this Bahamas?
And therein lies the problem with freedom of speech. Censorship, whether it's from the media, censorship, whether it's from a political organization, censorship if it's from an activist. I think that essentially, if people do not recognize it and speak out against it, it will continue down this road. And, you know, we could, in fact, become authoritarian state or a dictatorship, which is a slope that I do not believe is healthy for the forward development of our country. We cannot allow the political or the executive segment of our society to begin to instill this fear in us, where we feel that if we do certain things, we're going to be either prosecuted or victimized. Victimization is a way of suppressing your democratic rights. The unlawful arrest of individuals is another way of suppressing our democratic rights. We're not a military state. We're not a totalitarian state, authoritarian state, and worse, a dictatorial state. When we see these things, more and more voices have to be raised because, as you've rightly said, we have fought long and hard through our forebears to get these freedoms that we enjoy today. I believe that when we look at the executive orders and we look at the Constitution of the Bahamas, there is a lot of power reposed already outside of the executive orders in the office of Prime Minister. And I'm not talking, I must always reiterate, I'm not talking about the individual, I'm talking about the office. the office of the prime minister is a very powerful office with lots of latitude to do many things. Now you combine that with the emergency orders that we're currently under, and you see this sort of ugly dictatorship, authoritarian type rule beginning to seep in to our society. And that is why I believe it is important for people to be very familiar with the Constitution of the Bahamas, as Ms. Daxon quite rightly pointed out in your early newscast. We have got to make sure that our people understand what their rights are. And if they don't, those of us who do understand, we cannot sit back and allow democracy to be crushed.
Yeah, I so agree with you because I think key to the problem of what we see happening in our country today is that people do not understand their constitutional rights. And so when somebody comes to you and says, you do not have the right to assemble unless I give you permission to do so, I think people need to understand that there's a difference between your constitutional right as it speaks to freedom of assembly and a penal code as it speaks to safety of a protest. So because we don't know our rights, we stand by and we allow these things to happen, and then we say, oh, but you know that they are within their right to stop people from protesting because that people, you have to understand that Constitution. You have to. And quite frankly, Loretta, I believe that a reason why we do not have a greater level of knowledge of the Constitution, I think, quite frankly, that it is designed that way. Because I believe that for a long time, the powers that be didn't feel that they would have benefited from the masses understanding the Constitution, because then I know my rights, so I can demand more of you. What are your thoughts on that?
You see, the Constitution, you talked about the penal code and the statute laws for penalization. In a court of law, where there's ambiguity, the Constitution is the supreme law.
Exactly.
And that supersedes any law there is. So once people understand that the Constitution gives them the right to peaceful assembly, then they should have no fear. Now, I understand there are guidelines and there are all sorts of laws that we have implemented through the police department about people having to get permission and so on and so forth. That is, in fact, the case. And I'm not giving right to the fact that the DNA went out without permission, but there's just too much discretion, I believe, in the determination as to whether or not it will be a yay or a nay when one applies for these things. So if you truly want to test the law, and if it were to go even further, I think ultimately I know ultimately that our highest law is our Constitution. Now, have successive governments hidden it? No, the Constitution is not hidden. It is there for all of us to read, to understand, to digest. I do not believe that we have been in our educational system, in our education of Bahamians, even Bahamians as they attain a certain age, they're not required to understand their Constitution. And maybe that needs to be a requirement so that people can clearly be able to know when they are within or without the realm of their rights.
And this is exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't mean to say hiding it from you, but why is it not being taught in our schools to the degree that we are ensuring that the masses have that understanding? Yeah, it's there for anybody to access. I agree with that. But could we be doing more to ensure that it is ingrained in all of our citizens, even going through the educational system? So that is exactly what I'm talking about here. Why are we not seeing that happen?
I remember in 1972-73, when I was a student and we were moving towards independence, and I'm sure you would have had to do this as well. We had to learn the national anthem inside out. Remember, we knew God Save the Queen, but of course, we were now going to be independent. We had
Yes.
to recite our national anthem, learn the music to it, sing it, and understand it. Unfortunately, we did not get lessons on our new constitution. And I think over the years, it has just not been raised to that level of importance. The same way we are able to do math and English, our civics is very important. And many times we study history, we don't study our own history, and we certainly do not learn our own constitution. And so this is something that education, the Department of Education, should incorporate further into our curriculum so that every Bahamian and everybody living in the Bahamas who goes through our educational system is familiar and knowledgeable of what the Constitution says.
Agreed, 100%. So desperately needed. Okay. I want to read a couple of our comments from Facebook. And by the way, I'd love to throw out the number for you to call. The numbers are 828-3543, 828-3543. And our text line is 828-2543, 828-2543. Bertha says, I think the Constitution should have been taught in our schools from years ago, especially Bahamian history. So yes, we are in agreement with that, Bertha. No disagreement there. Let's see. Stacy says, the media asked Dr. McMillan a question yesterday, and she didn't answer the question in fear of being victimized. Okay, I don't know if you can say what she was in fear of, how you got inside her head, but it is what it is.
But let's just look at that. I do not know what they're talking about.
Well, there was the health officials yesterday held a press conference to bring us up to date on the latest developments as it relates to COVID-19, and the media asked her, is it wrong? And I'm paraphrasing here. Is it wrong? Does the Ministry of Health or you officials have a problem with the way that these political parties have been campaigning in the face of all of this? You're telling everybody else to not gather in groups, large groups, and yet here they are campaigning. Why are you not speaking to that? Why are you not condemning that? And she stuttered and she stammered and she pivoted and she pointed and she, did her best to give a very generic answer.
And therein lies the problem. I'm not going to criticize her, but she is the one with the scientific data that is supposed to be the guidelines for every individual, from the prime minister down to the infant. And, if in fact that is how it played out, I think that for me would be a challenge, because I want to hear specifically from the practitioners, the scientists, those persons that are advising the government on the protocols that should be taken, why these things are happening outside of what you're telling us as the general population. And so sometimes you find in our system of governance, people, not Dr. McMillan in particular, because I can't speak to that, but persons who work within government agencies almost feel that they cannot go outside the dictates of the executive. And that presents a problem, because the executive is not always privy to that, to the medical and scientific information that those persons are privy to. And so it would have been, in my opinion, at that time for her to speak to that very eloquently as to why any political organization should not be doing so and should not be a reprimand for saying so.
So we have to take a break, but obviously when we're talking about a threat to democracy, victimization has to be discussed, because that is a problem in this country. So we're going to talk about that on
big problem.
Very big problem. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. My guest today is Loretta Butler Turner. We're talking democracy under threat, and this is GPS. Stay with us.
Ocean blue is the best in seafood. Fresh out the water and affordable too. We got fish, conch, lobster, shrimp, everything you want. Ocean blue got it. Ocean blue, friendly and clean, best service you ever seen. Ocean blue is the best in seafood. Fresh out the water and affordable too. Ocean blue seafood, we are here for you. Ocean blue seafood, no one else will do. Ocean Blue Seafood, located on Burnett Road. Contact us at 393-2160.
Boy, here calamity. Boy, don't want that be me. Let me get this coverage, do it once and for all. Insurance management is who I gonna call.
When calamity strikes, we're here to keep you safe and secure. With offices in Nassau, Freeport, Abacoy, Lutheran, and Exuma. Insurance management, we cover the Bahamas.
At Lee Air, safety is our #1 priority. Flying since 1996, we offer scheduled flights into Fresh Creek and Mangrove Key Andros and Great Harbor Key, Berry Island, twice daily, 7 days a week. Affordable charter services are also available to anywhere in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Lee Air Charter Services. Call 225-3267, 702-7127, or 322-1317 for reservations.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I am your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Loretta Butler Turner. We're talking democracy under threat. So just prior to the break, we touched on the problem of victimization, which is a huge problem here in the Bahamas, because especially, as someone who has been burnt by it multiple times, especially for the media, you should not have to walk on eggshells to tell the truth. You should not have to be concerned about whether or not you're going to have your job at the end of the day if you reveal the truth. And when I look at what is happening specifically with the media, we're going to talk about the media first and then move on to the rest of the populace as it relates to victimization. But when I see what is happening with the media today, and I'm sorry, with this all-out attempt to control the narrative, what do I mean by that? How can you have a press conference and you tell the members of the media you only have 2 questions and you can't follow up? And so you can give me some run around non-answer, and I don't have a right as a media professional whose job it is to inform the populace of what is happening. I don't have the right to ask you a follow-up question. So clearly you're trying to control the media. And quite frankly, I think, I wonder sometimes whether or not the young journalists in this country today are really afraid to really go at these people for fear of repercussions. So how can you have a healthy democracy if at the end of the day, Victimization is always lingering over your head to the point where you may not feel free enough to do your job for fear of repercussions.
And you have actually hit on a very important pillar of democracy. And in democracy, the fourth estate, the media, is every bit as important as the other three pillars of democracy. And so when you attempt to put a stranglehold on the media, now the media must also be responsible. Let me say that. They must be responsible in what they are reporting. But there are laws to deal with libel, defamation, and things like that. You should not, as a professional journalist, or any journalist for that matter, fear for your job, your livelihood, because you're pursuing truth. If in fact you state something that is inaccurate, there are many ways of dealing with that, either through retraction, either through libel or defamation. And I think that that is also important, because that's why you have the judiciary, you have the legislation, you have the executive, and the media. And the media is, in fact, the should be the interpreter for the masses, because the media is supposed to have a full and complete understanding of everything that is being presented. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is through actively investigating and asking the pertinent questions. Hence, we still do not have in our country today the Freedom of Information Act. And why do we not have that? We do not have that, in my opinion, because many people fear, and when I say people, many persons in authority fear having that light of truth shone on actions that they are taking. If we were a full-fledged democracy, freedom of information would be no problem.
I see, I'm getting a comment, well, several comments here, but this one is from Graham Weatherford. Graham says, they will crush anyone who speaks out. So it's not just the media. Anyone who speaks out, he believes they will crush. Stacy says, Dr. Minnis doesn't respect the media, period. He rarely answers questions from them. And Graham again says, and we have the Governor General and the Queen at the top. So, Rose says, hi, Michelle and lovely Miss Butler. We need a woman like her to run this country. She will be the greatest leader. All right. Well, good luck with that, because she's already said she ain't coming back, but maybe you can convince her. But getting back to the topic at hand today, Graham is right. This is not just affecting the media, but when you have the general citizen who is always seemingly in fear of, well, I can't be seen to be supporting this particular party because, especially if it's not the party in power, because, I don't want any repercussions on my job or all this kind of thing. It is a sad state to be in when we are afraid to exercise our constitutional rights, because at the end of the day, we don't know what is going to happen to us. And, quite frankly, I see it all the time. People say, oh, we need somebody to speak up for us on this. So they won't push you to go in the front and take the licks. But they stay in the background. They support you, mind, from afar, because they're afraid that if they speak up, then there could be a problem with them and their livelihood trying to do for their families. That's not what democracy is all about.
And successive governments, unfortunately, use the public purse, and I'm going to demonstrate how I mean, to either, I hate to say it, but to buy the media. Let me give you a case in point. There are very lucrative government contracts that are given or awarded to the print media, as we all know, things such as the government gazettes, and those are very lucrative contracts. And I think what happens is many times, in order to maintain that cash flow, the powers that be are willing to sacrifice the truth, or or at least dictate to their employees what should be reported at a given
Yes.
time. Now, when you look at a state-run radio station, which we had for many, many years, which was a monopoly, you saw it back in the 60s and 70s, where ZNS was basically not just a reporting agency, but almost the mouthpiece of the government in power.
For
And
sure.
so when you look today at the freedom of and the relaxation of competition within broadcast media, television media, you do have these various competitions and establishments that are willing to tell a different story. In steps government sometimes and provide a lucrative contract, and then you see the bias start to creep in the way even the privately run companies are conducting their business. And so
For
all
sure.
of this plays into our democracy and our rights as a people to know the truth.
I had a guest on the show just very recently who said to me, and I won't call his name, and I won't call the name of the media house, but this guest said to me that he was advised by a reporter at the media house that after a meeting with the ownership of that media house from, I guess, whoever was interested in him not being able to speak out, because I have to be very careful not to call any names here, that she was pulled in, and all of them were pulled in by their bosses at that media house to say, you are no longer allowed to cover this man. Now, clearly that was a financial decision. But how is that? How do you call yourself a beacon of truth? How do you call yourself a member of the movement to ensure that your people understand what is really happening in their country, and then you're going to make that kind of financial decision?
Or threat.
To say we're not going to cover this. That is just so wrong. But you're right. It is a very serious problem. Apart from the fact that we have a state-owned agency and ZNS, and listen, I worked there for 20 years, so I know inside and out exactly what you're talking about. But now, an even greater threat to democracy is, and you just touched on it, where we have these privately owned stations that have their own agenda as it relates to what they would like or who they would like to see in power. And so even they come to you with a slanted view. And if you make the mistake, like I did, and you go on that station and you say something that mashed the wrong corn, you learn very quickly, sweet girl, this how this rolls. Okay.
And I think very recently we also saw an incident, if I'm not mistaken, with Darrell Miller. I'm not quite sure what the dynamics were, what he was covering, but apparently he was pulled off a show one day because he was going to do something contrary to I find it reprehensible that independent talk show hosts are not able, even with their disclaimers, because I think each independent talk show host has to have a disclaimer to say these are not the views of this particular establishment, so that they will not be open to defamation and libelous threats.
Exactly.
So, that's all a part of why IRCA was established, to ensure that there is parity and there's understanding of what is said. IRCA, in this instance, is the regulating authority for broadcast and for other things as well. And so if there was something that was done remiss or, incorrectly stated, that is where the agency of IRCA should have come into play. And, a lot of people don't understand all these different agencies that we have that are checks and balances to ensure that truth is told and that we're not just having a bunch of excuse my pun, idiots out there fuming at the mouth and putting stuff into the public discussion that is inaccurate. So there
Agreed
are
with you.
checks and balances.
Yes,
And
and so
once,
let them do their job.
and once they are in place, we should be free. You as journalists, as the fourth pillar of democracy, you're supposed to be free to speak to whatever it is you want to speak to without having to worry about whether or not you're stepping on some politician's toes.
Politicians or oligarchs, because it's not just the politicians. But anyway, we have a call on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS. Hello, caller. We can hardly hear you. Can you speak up, please?
Yes, sir. What I like to say is right. Democracy has been poor, and our constitution did some to improve our democracy, but it still have issues. You see, just the lack of separation of powers from the executives and the legislature. There's a minimum number of cabinet members, but no maximum. You see, and as well as you have in our constituency sizes, you have constituencies with 2,000 voters have the same power those with 5,000, 6,000 voters, and that's not democracy. As well as you're talking about the media, and we having more than one media or private media. Private media is money rule, not democracy. It seems like the more money you have, the more power you have. Not it's not about the votes. You see, so with journalists, they are controlled by money. You see, so government control, money control. It's still not democratic. Poor people have issues. We have a society where the media don't support income tax. They don't support livable wage. Them sort of things. So what we need is true progressive representation for the poor. You see, in this country, we need true liberalization. And is this what we want? We want to say we are liberal. Then we must have all the rights. Rights for the gays, rights for everybody. You see, so we can't call ourselves liberal and progressive and we're not. Can't call ourselves national and we're not. The media needs to speak the truth to power. In fact, we need progressive media in this country. Then we'll truly have some democracy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for calling.
Well, he's touched on several points that are very important. One, of course, is the parity of the vote. And it's so unfortunate, physically, we have an archipelagic nation. And because by its very nature, we have a lack of population in some islands and a very dense population in New Providence, followed by Abaco and Grand Bahama. And so when you talk about the parity of the vote, he's absolutely correct in terms of those of us who are in large constituencies. Our vote really is not as strong as the vote of a constituency that has maybe 2,000-3,000 people. And that in and of itself is something that, would be very difficult to fix at this point. But, without increasing the amount of money that we would be made to pay for representation with extra MPs, I don't think we need extra MPs at this point. He also spoke on the separation of powers with regards to the executive, the legislation, the judiciary, etc. There is a very thin line that it is diminished when it comes to the executive and the legislative and the judiciary, because at the end of the day, you have the Attorney General, for example, who is supposed to be the advisor for the government, but who is also in charge of the judicial arm of the Attorney General's office. This is a very, very difficult position because by by extent, the Attorney General can make a ruling that has to be followed, or by the officers of the judiciary, at least within the Attorney General's office. That's a very dangerous thing. So we need autonomy when it comes to that. We need greater parity of the vote. And like you said, there's no maximum amount of persons that we can have in cabinet. And so you see even that being abused to sort of negate any sort of dissenting voice, if you will. Because once you're a part of cabinet, your voice is collectively combined with whatever cabinet passes down in terms of policy.
Yeah, we have seen that play out. So yes, we can concur that this is an issue. Now, Graham brought up something earlier, talking about the Queen. Do you believe that it is time for us to consider moving towards a direction of a republic to protect our democracy, or do you believe that we can have a true democracy under the current system? I see you smiling. What are your thoughts?
I hear this argument all the time. I don't think, well, let me answer it like this. First of all, the Queen has nothing to do with our day-to-day democracy. Okay? We chose not to become a republic. We have a Queen's representative here in the person of the Governor General, which is really a ceremonial head of state. There are certain duties that must happen for our laws to be enacted that are signed off by the Governor General before they are actually enacted or gazetted. So, I mean, in terms of our democracy, that is not the problem. You look at the system of governance we have inherited, not just us, but all CARICOM countries. And it is the Westminster system that we inherited from Great Britain. You look at our fellow CARICOM countries, many of them have tweaked their constitution as it best related to their particular situations. In the instance of the Bahamas, we have never, ever done that. Barbados is probably the next country in line to replace the Queen with, they're going to become a republic. And what will they then have? Let's say they're going to have a president and a prime minister. You're still going to have a ceremonial head of state. If we were to move toward a republic, how democratic is our process going to be in us choosing that president? Is it going to be someone that is going to be appointed, like in the case of the Governor General, by the party in power? Once again, that is not totally democratic. So if we are going to move towards a republic, I think these are questions that we need to look at. But also, we cannot move towards a republic without a referendum.
I gotcha. I understand. Well, I don't know if I think our history has shown that I think governments may be shy of bringing referendum because it's not gone down well for each government that has brought one to the Bahamian people. At the end of the day, it's not gone down well for them. So I want to read a comment. This one is from Adrian. Adrian says, when a Bahamian woman has ambition, we are quick to cast stones. She warned us about Papa Dogmanus. We did not listen. Okay. Thanks so much, Adrian. We're not, again, this show is not about politics. Loretta's made it very clear that she is not here to discuss politics today. We are here to talk about the democracy, the health of our democracy in the Bahamas, whether or not our democracy is under threat. And if we believe it is, what should we be doing to protect our democracy? That's what this show is all about today. Graham says, what if we say yes to referendum, but the Queen says no through her Governor General? I don't think that is something that we need to be concerned about. Is it, Loretta? I don't think.
If we wanted to have a referendum on whether or not we're going to become a republic, quite frankly, Great Britain would, cannot intervene in that. That is the choice of the people. The same way we made the choice to become a sovereign nation. And, you know, I do not know if our forebears who actually went to London to receive our Constitution were forward thinking enough in terms of many of the what is it I want to say? Many of the parts of the Constitution that we now see today are not effectively working in our society. And I think that also when that Constitution was given to us, we did not make it clear to our people at independence that it is not a static document, but rather a document that is supposed to be more a living document that is not, you know, that can be changed, because we're constantly creating new laws. We're constantly updating old statute laws. But at the end of the day, they're still being run by this very archaic constitution. Because that is why when we go to the Privy Council, our last court of appeal, they ultimately look at our Constitution to make a determination on our statute laws.
Okay. I have a comment that says, where did it go? Where did it go? Just give me 1 second here. Chandria says, when you are micro-governed, it's not real independence. It's a matrix system that causes one to believe that they are in charge when they are really not. Let's see. We have another one that says, this is Graham again. Graham says, the Queen, the power of the Commonwealth is vested in Her Majesty. And he goes on to say she is the boss. Yeah, you don't agree with that.
I really, really, really do not agree with that. The Queen does not interfere in any which way in the governance of an independent country. We do pledge allegiance to the Queen because we decided at independence that we will continue to hold her as the head of state. However, our independence affords us the ability to make our own decisions. And the only caveat I have is that we have a constitution that has bound us so tightly that it's very difficult for us to make changes without the masses agreeing to that change.
Okay, we have to take a break, but I want to shift gears a bit on the other side of the break, because this is a matter that's also very important to you, and I want to tie it into our democracy, and that is gender equity. Can we have a true democracy if there is not equity? You may think, oh, Michelle, you're always trying to bring in this feminist agenda, but one really does affect the other. And so we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. Stay with us. This is GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. My guest is Loretta Butler Turner, and we are talking democracy under threat. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Located on Carmichael Road, Divine Designs Hair Boutique is a haven for women and men looking for professional beauty services. Our state-of-the-art and contemporary equipment creates a relaxing ambiance for you to enjoy while we cater to you. Need a hairstylist? We cater to all types and textures of hair for care and styling. We even have a barber on duty. Need a nail tech? Our technicians provide a range of nail services, including the latest trends. Unwind in one of our massage chairs while you get your pedicure. With our reasonable rates, friendly staff, and over 20 years of experience, you will be in great hands. Call us at 823-1669 or 698-1025 to schedule your appointment. Want to be pampered? Want to be slayed? Let Divine Designs make your day.
Looking for an extraordinary junior high school with caring, qualified staff and affordable tuition? Then come visit us at Elite School of Excellence, an affiliate of First Step Academy. ABECA-focused and Ministry of Education approved, we foster discipline, integrity, and wisdom while molding our students for success. Call us at 341-8846 or stop by First Step Academy schools on Fire Trail and Soldy Roads for more information.
Executive Printers is your one-stop shop for all your branding and customization needs. Letterheads, envelopes, business cards, invoices, share and gift certificates, rubber stamps, vouchers, funeral programs, brochures, flyers, banners, and promotional items like mugs, water bottles, mouse pads, and key rings, all with personable service and great quality. No project is too small or too large. For great turnaround and competitive pricing, make an executive decision. Call us at 393-5011.
Escape from the city life to Bacon Air Beach Resort in Pirateswell, Mayaguana. Relax in one of 16 air-conditioned rooms just steps away from the ocean. Enjoy scrumptious dishes in our waterfront dining room. Sip on a tropical cocktail, or if you must, stay connected with wireless internet. Nestled on one of the most beautiful beaches in the Bahamas, Bacon Air Beach Resort offers a unique vacation experience. For reservations, call 339-3726 or 463-0182.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Loretta Butler Turner. We're here talking about democracy under threat. Should we be concerned about what we see happening in our country today? Is it a threat to our democracy? And if so, what do we need to be doing about it? Our telephone lines are 828-3543. 828-3543 is the number to call. And our text line is 828-2543. 828-2543 is the text line. And of course, we invite you to, those of you watching us via Facebook, to leave a comment, and we will go ahead and share some of your comments. So prior to the break, I mentioned that we would turn our attention to gender equality and whether or not it has an impact, or should I say gender inequality, gender inequity, whether or not that has an impact on our democratic process. What are your thoughts on that, Loretta?
Without question. I mean, when you think about the fact that constitutionally, there are gaps in what males and females are not able to do on the same playing field, we understand that there is definitely inequity. When you look at the population of the Bahamas, I think in the last census, we discovered that there are more females in our country than there are males. And it has to be very importantly noted that women do not have the same rights as our male counterparts.
Yeah. And so how does that put a limit on our ability to advance as a nation? Obviously, if you don't have all of your citizens participating at the level that they have the potential to participate at, clearly, at the end of the day, that creates a problem for you as it relates to your productivity as a nation, and I would dare say the health of your democracy. Now, before you answer that, we have a caller on the line, so let's go straight to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to GPS.
So good morning, Michelle.
Hey,
And
Graham.
I want to say a special good morning to Miss Loretta Turner Butler.
Good morning.
And you know, coming on. I appreciate you coming on, and I think you should come on more often, giving us some insight into what these wicked, as Ingram would say, wicked men are up to. But, you know, it's really sad. You know, it's what keeps people who have sense and good people at bay, because they're scared of victimization and they're scared of having evil things done to them. And I'm having to watch my words because I don't want to end up on the porch like some of the people at ZNS. But, you know, Michelle, it's really sad because the good people that have passed through ZNS that could have contributed and helped build that organization were stifled. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. And then you have other places pop up and they pick sides. They won't have someone on a radio show that thinks differently. And once again, I'm having to watch everything I say in the, I don't even want to say Commonwealth, because the wealth ain't common. And the sad part is, we do for foreigners what we will never do for locals. And that's a whole show. And you could break that down any which way you wish. Because after 47 years of internal self-governance, I don't see how we've only made 10 to 20 sunny fellows and not the masses. But I just want to commend you for coming on, Ms. Butler. And Michelle, it's a good show. Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you so much, Graham. Ms. Butler, do you want to respond to him? Ms. Butler Turner.
I think Graham eloquently speaks for himself. And you know, Graham always adds to the national conversation, as does other people. And I don't think that they should have to watch or be fearful of what they have to say. But getting back to your question about women and the inequality we have when you do not have the full participation of every individual for the country to reach its widest potential. I want to look at two instances. If a woman who reproduces all of our population, if a woman, a married woman, does not have the right to bring her children back to the Bahamas because they have a foreign father because of her marriage, we're already cutting out some intellectual resources that the country can benefit from. I think that's very important, first and foremost. And we've seen this played out in many instances. We have, I hope, you know, they don't mind me speaking to it, but we have a very high-level individual in governance, not elected, who married a foreigner, came back to the Bahamas to contribute to our major economic product. And I think every several months, she had to take her children to the Department of Immigration to ensure that they had status here, simply because she was married to a foreigner. Now, some people may say that's an isolated incident. It is not. It happens in many, many cases. And we have people who are intellectually gifted, that have children that can make a positive contribution to our country. But because they're not considered to be Bahamians by reason of birth or having a foreign father, where are they giving that contribution? They're having to give that contribution to some other country. So when I talk about my interest is in the intellectual and human resource of our country and not having a brain drain, I think that is very, very important. So women are disadvantaged and their children are disadvantaged. The next disadvantage.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The next disadvantage is the representation, the electoral process. Many times women are afraid to enter the political arena because, as was rightly said, they're always measured by a different measuring stick than their male counterparts, or they're victimized because some archaic document says we're not equal, so we shouldn't lead. And then, of course, sometimes you have the religious argument that women are not supposed to lead. Well, quite frankly, I think COVID has demonstrated very clearly around the world that some of the countries that have done best during this pandemic have been led by women. And so those are two examples of why I think it's really reprehensible that we do not have gender equality in this country.
I couldn't agree with you more. And honestly, I've heard this repeatedly in some quarters that, you know, the illegal immigrant has more rights than the Bahamian woman in this country as it relates to the Bahamian woman who's married to a foreigner, as it relates to their offspring. And so we really, really need to, I think, understand that when you're talking about not allowing women to play their rightful role, and I've heard some people say, what more do you all want, Michelle? What more do you want? And I just smile when I hear that, because I'm thinking you cannot be serious. Because clearly there is a glass ceiling that still exists in this country, where you have the old boys club, and you know, they honestly act as if they are the only ones who have a right to ascend to the highest office in the land. And we have had women who have achieved wonderful things as far as that is concerned, as far as politics is concerned, but yet we have still such a low number of women represented in our cabinet, comparatively a low number of women who are in parliament. When you consider, you know, and the thing is this, we as women, I think, are also partly to blame, because we have to understand that it is our role to support each other. I will give you an example. Just the other day, when Lanisha Roll stepped down and the prime minister decided to appoint Pakeisha Parker Edgecombe in her place, I actually had a woman say to me, "Oh, I see where Pakeisha got that position." I'm like, "Yeah, you think she can handle that?" And I said to myself, "Well, why would you think she?" I actually said this to her, "Well, why would you think she couldn't? Based on what?" I don't hear anybody asking whether or not a man can handle the portfolio that he is given. So why is that a question for women? You know,
And that is always the case. You know, even when you look at the current rollout of possible candidates for the upcoming elections, I have been privy to conversations where people immediately start denigrating, ostracizing some of the females that are putting themselves forward, but yet they don't even look at the male counterparts. And you know, the majority of them, when you weigh them in the balance, they offer nothing more than their female counterparts. But you know, I have to go back to the question that you ask, that people always ask: what more do you want? Do they understand how important it is for my offspring, my children, our children, to be able to come and be a contributing part of our society? See, a gentleman or a man does not give birth. We're not sure that the child that he says is his child is actually his child, because he did not give birth to that child. A woman knows without doubt that she has given birth to a child. So a man goes away, he marries a foreign woman. She could have however many children she wants, may not be for him, but once he brings them back here, they're Bahamian. A woman goes away, she has her children, which she gave birth to. She brings them back to the Bahamas, and the question is, "Oh, you can't be Bahamian. How could you not be Bahamian? And you're the woman that birthed this child, and you're a Bahamian." I think a lot of people do not take time to even think about that. And so you want to talk about inequality? That's a grave, grave inequality for our people, for our children and generations to come.
Yeah, it's a problem. Felicia, I want to read a comment. Felicia says, it pains me to say this, but Bahamian women are not respected in the Bahamas, and it's the women who also contribute to our disrespect. I will never forget that it was women who voted against our gender equality referendum. Yeah, that was very sad to watch, not once, but twice. And we're not, and I want to be clear, because I'm accused all the time of being a feminazi, they call me. We're not just saying that women should be promoted simply because of the fact that they're women. But the thing is, if you have two candidates in front of you, both are equally qualified, then why is it that your nod goes to the male simply because you think, oh, because he's a man, he'll do a better job? Both have the same qualifications. And whether you realize it or not, that is actually happening. And so this is something I think that we really have to move beyond just having a conversation about it, whereas that's the beginning of, awareness. We really need to, do you think that we have come to the place where we need to, as some countries have done, actually write things into law that will prohibit persons or entities from discriminating against women?
In the United States, they call it what do they call it? I'm not sure, but anyway, quotas. I don't know if quotas are the answer to filling these positions. Affirmative action in the United States is what they call it, huh? Where you can't have these discrimination.
I know affirmative action applies to race. I wasn't sure if it applied specifically to women as well, but you probably.
But affirmative actions, if we were to use it in a broad sense, is one of the things. Or in our system of governance, we sometimes say incorporating quotas. I think Rwanda, I want to use them as an example because they are a fine example of a country that has totally turned itself around from being male dominated to being a very successful integrated society. I believe Rwanda actually successfully used the quota system. And today they have elevated the life of so many persons. If you know the history of Rwanda, you know the immense suffering that women and children would have had there prior to their change. And now Rwanda is a beacon of hope. I don't know if the Bahamas is poised to introduce quotas because at this stage we still have a huge majority of males who sometimes feel threatened by the presence of outspoken, they call us aggressive women. And I think that under this current dispensation, you won't see such a thing happening. But we need to create environments and spaces where women understand their true worth and they're not having to get validation from male counterparts to understand what their worth is. I think that is important because I have seen women who are professionally accomplished, who have still not been certain of the power of what they can do unless they get validation from their male counterparts or their male bosses.
I know. I just think that is so ridiculous in 2021. It's a real problem. I want to switch gears a bit here, and I want to talk about the role of freedom of information as it relates to democracy. I mean, we've been hearing about a Freedom of Information Act now, successive governments, and everybody is dragging their feet as it relates to trying to implement a Freedom of Information Act. And yet, information is key to a healthy democracy. Key. And so if we don't have a Freedom of Information Act, how much of a threat is that to our democracy?
Once again, this takes us back to our very initial conversation about the media and them being able to have access to information so that that information can be widely shared and disseminated to the public. I think that people who are informed or well informed make the best decisions. If we were going to buy a vehicle, I'm going to use that as an example. We can go online, we can make comparisons between different models, what they can do, what they cannot do, and we're able to make an informed decision. In democracy, especially as we move into the political season, there is going to be a lot of things said. A lot of it will be inaccurate. A lot of positions will be put forth, and people are unable to fact check some of these things. With freedom of information, this is where the media needs to come in and ensure that anybody who is presenting themselves for public service are held accountable with accurate information. Because many times you see persons in the political arena spewing stuff that is more emotive than it is factual. And it's that emotive sort of response that people tend to move on as opposed to the factual stuff. And so I think freedom of information is very, very important to the preservation of our democracy, because we're going to get caught up in a cycle again of misinformation before we make a decision as to which government or which grouping of persons we want to actually represent us, because we don't have the correct information.
Yeah, it's a real problem in this country, and you know, a major problem for us is that we have really governments in secret that are signing on to agreements and creating these deals, and you know, keeping the information from us. And then by the time somehow it does get out, whether it be through a leak or some other way that we find out what has happened, by then everything is sealed. And well, I shouldn't say sealed, signed, sealed, and delivered. And we as a populace can't do anything about it, but you've signed us off to these things that now are impacting our lives. That cannot be.
And the reality is, you see the people that we vote for to represent us being offended when they're questioned.
Ain't that something?
And that in and of itself is a grave disservice, because you're not my boss. I'm the boss. We, the population, are the boss. You are representing us and you are to report to us. So don't tell me you're getting upset because you're being questioned about what you're doing on our behalf. And I think therein is a big problem. You know, when you go to Parliament now, if you were to just observe, the parliamentarians are protected by police officers and barricades and bodyguards and all types of things. Oh, no, you can't talk to this person. Okay. Well, you know, just a couple months ago, they were sitting in your living room eating out of your pot and plate. And now all of a sudden you can't talk to them. That is directly against the whole democratic process. You can't see your MP. You can't talk to your MP. You go down to the People's Square to try and see them because they ain't coming in your constituency, and the police telling you back off. They're too busy to talk to you. That's not democracy. I would like to have questions, and I have questions, and I need you to give me answers. So you, as the fourth estate, since I can't talk to my MP, I expect you to have access to ask those questions, and my MP or minister or whatever should not be getting hot under the collar because you're asking those questions.
Oh boy, I hope that certain people are listening to this show today. I ain't gonna call no name, but I really hope that that they're listening to this, and because it's honestly, I look at what is happening in this country, and I am fearful of where we are headed. We cannot continue to go down this road without some serious repercussions later on. You know, you can't plant corn and expect wheat to come up. And we are planting some very, very dangerous seeds as it relates to our democracy. Very dangerous seeds. And unless we deal with this, those seeds are going to germinate and sprout up. And are we prepared?
And they will. And that's the importance. That's why I think it's no longer important for us to just discuss politics. You know, Bahamians love talking about politics. They love talking about this person and that person. When the real problem, in my opinion, is the way that the political, the system is abused by the politicians. That is the problem. It's not the party. It's not the party, because the system itself is a good system. It's not a perfect system, but is a system that does have checks and balances. But when we allow those mechanisms within the system to be eroded, that's when we start to lose our democratic rights. And so you would have one party replaced by another party, which is probably not any different from the party that you're just putting out of power, but they all build on this erosion of our freedoms. And I think therein is the problem. This next election shouldn't be about whether you're ABC, XYZ, or whatever. We have got to get back to the basics where the Bahamian people understand that their rights are truly not being taken for granted and taken away from them, and that their rights are truly being represented, and not the rights of some donors to some political party. Because as you can see being played out in not just in the Bahamas, but even in the region and around the world, when the election is over, the people's wills, and desires are sidelined by the big money that would have contributed to these political organizations that are now getting their due, while the people's interests are no longer important. And that's to go, I think, on many instances. It's not, like I said, an ABC party or, you know, the other party. It's something that we as the Bahamian people must take note of. You will see lots and lots of money being spent, whether it's from the public purse by the current administration or any administration, or by oppositions who are getting donors. And then people say, oh, you know, on the election trail, they said they were going to do this for the people and they're going to do that for the people, but I only see these people benefiting. This is a very big problem also with electoral reform, which we heard bantered about. So if you are having big money donors donate to you, do you think they're giving you that money
because
for their
they love
vote?
Let's talk about campaign finance reform on the other side of the break. We have to take a quick commercial break, but this is really important, that campaign finance reform, because as long as we do not do that, and you have these special interests who can financially support the candidates of their choice, how you think that's going to affect the rest of us as it relates to our equal rights in this country and democracy? How? So we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. Stay with us. This is GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM.
I call it perfection, when elegance and taste make a connection. Every single dish is a taste of heaven. for your banquet or your wedding. Who you getting? HD Catering. HD Catering.
Book Heaven's Delicacy Catering today with Chef Lachey Jones and experience a taste of heaven on earth. Call 533-9621.
HD Catering.
Want to look your best and feel even better? Visit J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa for the ultimate beauty, body, and anti-aging treatments, offering custom colors, haircuts, vegan anti-freeze treatments, silk blowouts, natural and acrylic nails, unisex pedicures, facials, and massages, all waxing services, and microcurrent therapies for anti-aging and body sculpting. J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madeira Street, telephone 326-7863.
At the Shirley Street Plaza, you'll find Le Petit Gourmet, a small cafe that's big on flavor. Handcrafted delights made with love will not only please your palate, but feed your soul. Call us at 394-1251. 8 to 12 minutes is all it takes for a burglar to rob your home or business. Security Systems International provides professional and affordable solutions for both. Call 396-5000 for your customized quote. Gwen's Alterations provides professional services for all your tailoring needs, including face masks to keep you safe and in style. A stitch in time saves 9, so call us today at 393-6227.
For all your building needs, it's Carib Construction and Project Management on Gladstone Road. We build it all. Schools, homes, hotels, and more, including structures requiring a Phase 3 electrical contractor. We also provide project management services. The first step towards your dream building begins at Carib Construction and Project Management. Call us at 376-1556 or 341-4466.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
And welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Loretta Butler Turner. We're talking about democracy. Is our democracy under threat? And there are many, many layers to this conversation. So we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can in this last portion of the show. Prior to the break, we were talking about campaign finance reform. Obviously, we need to get to the place where this is a reality in our country. If you look at the United States, for instance, they have a very rigid format through which you have to report who is supporting your campaign, and for obvious reasons. Obviously, you want to know this because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that those persons are not, we say in the Bahamas, kisses go by favor. So we want to ensure that those persons are not receiving undue favor because they supported you in your effort to regain power. We don't have that here in the Bahamas. And so when you see things happen like certain companies just before election benefiting financially, I'm trying to be so careful how I say this, y'all. But when we see things like all of a sudden sidewalks have to be built all over New Providence. And you may say, well, Michelle, I don't understand where you're going with that. Well, my question is, who is really benefiting from those sidewalks being built, apart from the few contractors who got the job, who owns that cement company that is benefiting? You see, these are the kinds of questions that you have to ask, right?
Well, it's about economic survival for everyone. And
Yes.
I've got to tell you that, you will hear every electoral season where people say, or political parties said, we're going to introduce term limits. We're going to introduce electoral finance reform. We're going to introduce freedom of, those are all cliches now because we haven't seen them happen successively. Money is a huge influencer in elections, whether we like it or not. Whether it's the money that's paid out to some family to fix their roof or to pay for something or to buy them something, that's an influence. And we know it's illegal, but it happens and nobody says anything. And there are the electorate, they also know that it's the only time they can probably get something from their MP. And so every time you enter someone's house, they're going to tell you what their problems are because they know they probably won't see you for the next 5 years. And when you talk about democracy, how important is it? Because if I receive a financial gift for my vote, then why do I have to come back to you during the next 5 years? You've already gotten what you wanted from me, the MP. I don't need to do anything else for you. Remember now, I paid you. And so this is also a layer of democracy that we have got to eradicate. We've got to stop selling our right because it starts with the voter. And we must also realize that when something is done in our community, whether it is the upgrade of our roads, our sidewalks, our water system, our telecommunication system, that is what your government is elected to do. They're not doing you any favors.
Exactly.
And
That's
so
why you pay taxes.
That is why we pay taxes, and that is why we do those things. Now, I would like to ask my MP, who's backing your election? Do you think many persons will answer that question for you? Not very many people will answer that because the big money that goes into these parties is not for the actual election day. It is to buy influence. That influence is bought, and at the end of the day, that influence needs to be paid back to someone, and the someone is usually the big donor. And so what happens to the whole democratic process is that the masses are forgotten until the next electoral season. I think COVID, I don't know how it's going to play out here in the Bahamas, but it's going to be interesting to watch because I don't think we're going to be having those huge, massive rallies, which cost upwards of $250,000 every time you see a mass rally.
Well, here's the thing that relates to that. We heard both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health start to intimate that we're going to have herd immunity by summer. Now, I don't know how they figure that based on numbers and science, but they start putting this narrative out there. Oh, we expect to have herd immunity by summer. So what does that tell you? They are now gearing up, in my humble opinion, for this election campaign.
Well, I don't want to even talk about, about that aspect, but let's answer these questions. If, in fact, you get the vaccinations, there are some very important questions that still need to be answered. Does this make you immune to COVID? Does this mean that we no longer have to follow social distancing? Does this mean that we no longer have to wear our masks and sanitize our hands? Does this mean that we will no longer have COVID once everyone has been vaccinated? I'm sorry, from my research, the answer to all of those questions is no. Because even persons who have received the vaccine, and we saw it played out in the media just this week, a very high agency official is now home out of in quarantine, having received the vaccine and now has COVID. So that argument, unfortunately, does not merit this whole thing of herd immunity. And so Bahamians and, you know, the electorate, they need to be aware that taking the vaccine does not stop us from transmitting or being infected by the COVID virus. And, you know, this is why I started to say it is going to be interesting to see if, in fact, they're going to have these massive rallies again, which I do not think is going to be healthy, because if we're going through a third wave, which I think is being discussed at this point, are we going to allow a fourth wave to ensue for politics? No, it cannot happen. I don't think it should happen. I'm not saying it cannot happen. It should not happen, because the health of our country is still very, very important. Without the health of our people, our economic well-being is stagnated.
Agreed. Do you believe that we are overdue from having the implementation or seeing the implementation of one or a two-term limit for our prime ministers? Do you think we should be implementing that for the sake of democracy?
Well, let me just say this in jest. The fun thing about all of this is the Bahamian people have not been giving them a second term. I mean, you know, I mean, quite frankly, when last did we have a two-term government? That was in 1992 and 1997. Each successive election has been a change. So it's been a long time. And I think it still goes back to our argument and our discussion that we started to have about electoral reform. People are still influenced by the money that is spent during the election season. And unfortunately, if you're willing to take a very, very important thing like your vote and sell it, then you should not expect good governance.
I want to read a statement, a comment placed on Facebook. This one is by Stacy. Stacy says, "We need political debates. Tell them to keep their rum and t-shirt. We need real solutions to these problems." Political debates is something that you do not see in the Bahamas. And from when I was back in ZNS way back in the day, I was trying to get a debate going between the leaders of the major parties, and it just wouldn't happen. It didn't happen because they would not agree to it. Is there a way that we can demand that happens? Or, you know, we just have to continue to, you know, see these parties just, whoever comes up with the biggest party and the biggest and the nicest slogan, the catchiest slogan, they're the ones who are likely to win the next election. How much can we do to demand that we now have real debates in this country discussing real issues? Can that ever happen? Do you ever see that happening in this country?
It's not legislated, so more than likely it's not going to happen. But on a very fundamental level, in our parliamentary system, we're supposed to have robust debates every week in Parliament. And once again, you see the power of the executive, the very heavy-handed use of time, the very heavy-handed use of the manipulation of the system to gag the voice of the opposition. You also see it in the way the backbench works. I mean, if we truly want to be honest, our debates take place in Parliament. And that is the one place where you should have healthy and very vibrant debates. Unfortunately, our Parliament is so lopsided in its representation that the government side dominates the entire thing, and the debates are filled with conjecture and whatever it is that the government wishes to put out there. As soon as an opposition member stands on a particular matter, they're either jeered or they're silenced, sometimes by a non-independent speaker. And so the real focus of debate once again becomes a problem. You look in the Senate, where you have the upper chamber, and sometimes it's almost like watching a circus. And this, unfortunately, in our system of governance, is a part of the abuse of the democratic process, which I feel that, we need to examine. There is also a mandate that the opposition be given an opportunity to place questions to the government.
That's where I was going next.
Those questions many times were placed on the agenda of the House of Assembly, but they're never given an opportunity to be vented. And I'll give you a case in point. I remember being in Parliament one time, and there were questions put forward regarding the development of the point, for example, and with the makeup of the workforce, which is very important to construction workers in the Bahamas. And we were in opposition, and we could not even get the heads of the heads of agreement tabled for us to examine. Therein lies a big problem with the democracy of our system, when the executive and the legislative arms of the government do not allow us to question and to debate these things properly, because they're withholding the information.
Yeah, I do remember as a young reporter covering the House of Assembly, and there were question and answer periods when questions were answered. That actually took place in our parliament. But you know what? You're absolutely right as it relates to the fact that you have so few members of the opposition in there, in parliament, that it makes it difficult for a vibrant debate. But there's another problem as it relates to our parliament that I think is eroding our democracy, and that is how much it has been watered down. Let me explain what I mean by that. Back in the day, I'm old enough to remember this. You couldn't walk into Parliament and read verbatim some speech you prepared from paper. You had to actually walk in there and debate. We're not seeing that anymore. Now everybody goes in with their prepared script, and all they're doing is reading a speech which many times somebody has written for them, not even something that they've written themselves. And so what we have now in the House of in Parliament is not really a debate anymore. I walk in there, I read my speech, we bang on the desk, bang, 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 bang at the appropriate time. Like you say, we throw chairs at the few opposition members in there, and then we go home and we pat ourselves in the back and say, boy, I did a good job in Parliament today. Utterly ridiculous. But that is what we have going on in our country.
And I think a huge part of the problem is one, I think, the speaker does not enforce the law that you're only supposed to have speaking notes.
Right.
At budget, you can have the prepared text because you're speaking to particular things. So there is that exception. However, we do not have robust debates, because everyone, as you've accurately stated, usually are given a text, one that they're not familiar with. They don't even know what they're reading. I don't even know if they retain what they're reading off that paper. And they're not prepared to answer any questions regarding it. And when they're and in a vibrant debate, you are allowed as opposition to stand and question. And so when you talk about the breakdown of our democracy, and you talk about the debates, that system, the fundamental principle of our democracy, the parliament, has lost its ability to function the way it should. You are 100% correct. That is why I think even when you talk about trying to mandate debates among political parties, we all know that to be an effective debater, you've got to be able to think on your feet. You've got to have excellent recall, and you've got to be able to rebut with accuracy. Unfortunately, a lot of our people that are representing us today do not understand where the laws would have historically come from. They don't understand why these things are done, and they all have papers that they just follow. So there's never really a true debate.
Sad.
And we, the Bahamian people, suffer for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, because we only have like 9 minutes left in the show, at the end of the day, if we don't get this right, it is the Bahamian people, the masses, that suffer the most. So we got to find a way to get this right. Yes, the Bahamas is a very young nation, comparatively speaking. But they say when you hit 40, that means you're an adult. So we have to stop using the excuse that we're a very young nation, and we have to start putting on our big girl and boy underwear and start acting like an adult. What do we as a collective, we the people, what can we do to try to demand more, so that we start to act like an adult as it relates to our democracy? What can we the people do?
Well, I think that this is an opportune time, given the fact that we are going to be moving into an electoral season. As opposed to just accepting the promises that we hear at the rallies, we have an opportunity, just as we interview people for a job. These MPs are going to, or these prospective MPs are going to be knocking on your door. You need to interview them the same way you would be interviewed for the job, because you're not just sending your favorite party there. You're sending someone there that understands the needs of your community, or at least you hope they understand the needs of your community. You want to really drill them on, not only what is their vision, does their party agree with what they're selling to you or, promising you? Because many times once people are elected on a party platform, they no longer have a vision or a voice for their constituents. They then become a part of a party agenda. And once that party agenda does not include your particular constituency, then your constituents are left in the cold. Now, the flip side is opposition hardly ever get many things done when they are in opposition for their constituents, because once again, the whole system of governance tends to cater only to those constituencies where a government representative is. Very seldom does the opposition get the infrastructure or the necessary things that are needed if they're in opposition. And that unfortunately is unfair. The only thing that I think that you can really say that opposition members can make hay with is the constituency allowance. And nowadays, we don't even get an accurate reporting on what happens with that constituency allowance. I remember during the last time I was in frontline politics, I produced a booklet of the $500,000 that I would have gotten for the entire 5 years in my constituency, and laid out every project, every individual, every penny that was spent. And do you know, at the end of the day, the constituents themselves were upset, especially if they saw that something was done for their household or something. But this is the people's money. And if we're going to talk about accountability and transparency, then it was my duty to ensure that that money was clearly accounted for. Yes, people may catch feelings and get upset that, you had to put there that they needed assistance for an educational thing or a medical, whatever. But the point was that that money was for the constituency, not for my personal use. And so in me being accountable, I wanted to ensure that everyone saw how that money was spent. So there are some mechanisms in place where you can do more for your constituency if the government is not willing to give you all of the resources of government. And, like I said, the system can work, but it takes every part of the system to be accountable and transparent.
Final question. I have never seen in all my years walking this earth this many political parties vying for leadership in the Bahamas. I mean, every day you turn around, it seems another one pops up. So we have a lot of people now vying for leadership, which in a way is good for democracy, but in a way I think is a testament that our leadership must be pretty weak. Why all of these people all of a sudden coming forward and thinking that I could do a better job than this? So let's get your opinion on this. Is it good or bad for democracy that we see so many people now trying to vie for leadership? Is that a good thing or a bad thing as it relates to our democracy?
It's both. It's both because it speaks to the vibrancy of being able to have the freedom to do so. That's the first thing. It's bad in that people are pretty tired of the same old two-party system of governance. And they are looking for alternatives and they are looking for answers. In the long run, what is probably going to happen from just my perspective is that there are several things that may happen in the upcoming election. I don't think either of the major political parties have made themselves attractive given this environment, and it has been a very difficult environment. I don't think either of them are looking attractive to the electorate. I think the alternatives are very disjointed, and I don't see any of the new parties really presenting strong platforms for change. Now, as I started to say, what's going to happen? You're probably going to have a lower voter turnout because people are disillusioned. And then you're going to probably have people who say, well, I'm not voting for party A or I'm not voting for party B, which are the two major parties. I'm going to go with either an independent or some other third organization. And the problem I see there is that in closely contested areas, you're probably going to end up, in my opinion, with one of the two major parties, duking it out and, diluting that. So you could end up essentially with a return of what we have now, or, a lower turnout and closer margins. If we have greater balance in Parliament at the end of the day, in terms of the numbers of government versus opposition, and maybe even one or two other voices, I think that it will begin to strengthen the process. Because wherever you have a huge mandate given to one side, that is when democracy is most easily eroded, as we have now. I hearkened back to 2007, I think it was, when we had a pretty close split in the Parliament. It was 18 to 23, I think it was, or something like that. Very, very close. And what you had is that every member of Parliament had to always be present. And they had to make their contributions. When you have strong opposition, you have better governance.
Great.
When you have huge mandates, these swings that we've been going into from one side to another, you have very poor governance. So the strength may not be in the number of parties that are contesting. It could, in fact, perhaps bring greater balance to the House of Parliament, where that is the seat of democracy. So when we're talking about democracy, we need to see greater balance there. We need to see balance not only on the political sides, we need to see balance in the gender distribution as well, because women and men bring different views to the table. And of course, that all helps to make a stronger democracy, in my opinion.
Wow. Time is gone. It's 1 o'clock already. Thank you so much. It's a strong point to end on. I want to end with a shout out from a friend of yours, Terrence Cartwright. Says, excellent program, Ms. Malcolm. Keep up the great job. I'm a Bahamian living in High Point, North Carolina. And I believe it's Terrence who also sent a text that's saying the same thing and then says, say hello to my good friend, Loretta. Much blessings always. I am just so grateful that you finally came on the show. Thank you so much for joining us on GPS today. Wow, we got to get you back on at some point. I know we overtime producers, but I got to ask this question. And I know the answer, but I got to ask anyhow. Any chance that you come back?
I doubt it.
Well, we'll see. All right. Thank you so much, Loretta. Thank you so much for being here today. Really,
thank you for having me. And thank you that it was not political.
Well, I was going to keep my word that we would not go there. Thank you so much. All right, guys, time is gone. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thanks so much for joining us. Tomorrow is Friday. That means it's going to be an open line show, TGIF. Until then, have a good afternoon.